Assalamu alaikum, my dear students. I hope you all are fine. So today we are going to discuss about the pituitary gland. Okay, but before we really start discussing about pituitary gland, let me tell you what are the things which we are going to cover in today's lecture. First thing, we will see the basic anatomy of the pituitary gland, and then we will see what is the connection between the pituitary gland and the hypothalamus, and then we will see what are the hormones which are secreted by the pituitary gland. Okay, so before discussing about the basic anatomy of the pituitary gland, let me tell you the location of the pituitary gland. Okay, I hope you remember this. This is the diagram of the central nervous system. Central nervous system, it contains this is the cerebrum here, this is the midbrain, this is the pons, medulla, spinal cord, here is the cerebellum. And this here is the diencephalon, part of the diencephalon, which is called as the thalamus. And anterior to thalamus and a little inferior, there is the hypothalamus. Fine. Hypothalamus, suppose this is a piece of the hypothalamus here. Now, inferior to hypothalamus or attached to hypothalamus is this gland which is called as the pituitary gland. You can see right here. Fine. Now, this pituitary gland is located in inside our cranium actually. There is one bone which is called as sphenoid bone. Okay, suppose here is the sphenoid bone, and that sphenoid bone has one depression inside, and that depression is called as the sella turcica. Fine, suppose here is sella turcica. And that sella turcica, which is also called as hypophyseal fossa, hypophyseal fossa. Hypophyseal fossa. Why it is named as hypophyseal fossa? Fossa is a depression, and hypophyseal means it contains the pituitary gland inside. Hypophysis is the name of the pituitary gland. Okay, so this pituitary gland, which is right here, this pituitary gland is located there in this sella turcica. Fine, like this. Okay, so this pituitary gland is of a size of a pea, okay, or it is a pea-shaped or a size of a pea, with about the weight of this pituitary gland is about 0.5 grams. Fine, that is the basic introduction about the pituitary gland. Now coming to the basic anatomy or the structure of the pituitary gland. This pituitary gland is actually, it contains two parts, two major parts, which are called as two lobes of the pituitary gland. Okay, you can see right here, this is the hypothalamus. Hypothalamus is connected with this pituitary gland with this funnel-shaped structure right here, which I have drawn here. And this, suppose here is the hypothalamus. This is hypothalamus. Hypothalamus, I hope you remember, is the part of the diencephalon, and diencephalon जो है इसमें hypothalamus आता है, which is a sheet of a gray matter. Gray matter means that it is made up of various nuclei. And I hope you remember nuclei. Nuclei are the bunch of the cell bodies, okay, inside the central nervous system is called as a nucleus. Fine. So the many nuclei are present in the hypothalamus, or which are making up the hypothalamus. Okay, that is the hypothalamus. Now here is this funnel-shaped structure, this stalk. This is called as the infundibulum. Infundibulum. And this infundibulum is actually the connection between the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland. Okay, then this pituitary gland has two lobes. I have told you two major lobes actually. One is on the anterior side, the front side. Okay, that is because it is present in the anterior side, so it is called as the anterior lobe. Anterior lobe. Okay, and this lobe right here is present in the posterior side, so it is called as the posterior lobe. Fine. This anterior lobe is different from the posterior lobe. This anterior lobe has a different histology and this posterior lobe has a different histology. Okay, they are histologically different actually. This anterior lobe, it is made up of glandular epithelium. Okay, it is made up of epithelial tissue, which the epithelial tissue has a special type that is called as glandular epithelium, and that glandular epithelium, we already know that they are having the secretory functions. So it is definitely secreting the hormones, so it has the secretory functions. So this anterior lobe is called as, it is made up of the glandular epithelium, and this anterior lobe is also called as adenohypophysis or hypophysis. And when we talk about this posterior lobe is made up of nervous tissue. Okay, it is made up of nervous tissue, and so this posterior lobe is called as the neurohypophysis. Okay, they actually have the different origins. There is the superior outpouching of the oral mucosa, which gets developed into the anterior lobe, and once that superior outpacking of that oral mucosa, once that comes in contact with this posterior lobe, then it gets adhered to this posterior lobe and it gets detached from that the oral mucosa, and it becomes the part of the pituitary gland. And this neurohypophysis, it gets developed from the brain. It is actually the part of the brain. Okay, so that is why it is made up of the nervous tissue. Fine. So anterior lobe. One more time, this is the hypothalamus here. Hypothalamus is connected with the pituitary gland by this funnel-shaped structure here, which is called as infundibulum. And this infundibulum is also made up of nervous tissue. Okay, and then there is the two major lobes of the pituitary gland. One is the anterior lobe, and anterior lobe is also called as adenohypophysis, and it is made up of glandular epithelium. And then there is this posterior lobe, which is made up of nervous tissue, and nervous tissue, that is why it is called as the neurohypophysis. Okay, and nervous tissue, it is made up of nervous tissue. There are unmyelinated nerve fibers which are making the this neurohypophysis or the posterior lobe, and there are spatial cells which are called as pituocytes. There are spatial glial cells which are making up this this neurohypophysis or the posterior lobe. Then there is this small lobe in between the anterior lobe and posterior lobe, which is histologically similar to the anterior pituitary gland or anterior lobe. Fine. This lobe here is called as the intermediate lobe. Intermediate lobe. And this intermediate lobe, it is present in between the anterior lobe of the pituitary gland and the posterior lobe of the pituitary gland. Or we can say anterior pituitary and the posterior pituitary. Fine. So this is the very basic anatomy of the pituitary gland. Okay. So it is connected with the hypothalamus by the infundibulum. Fine. Now coming back here. Now, before we see what are the hormones which are secreted by the pituitary gland, both anterior pituitary as well as the posterior pituitary, let us see what are the connections between the hypothalamus and the anterior pituitary and between the hypothalamus and the posterior pituitary. Okay, fine. So here is our anterior pituitary gland and there is the posterior pituitary. Okay, or the anterior lobe, posterior lobe. Adenohypophysis, neurohypophysis. Fine. When we talk about the connection between the hypothalamus and the posterior pituitary, there is the connection here. I have told you that the hypothalamus, it is made up of various nuclei. There are various nuclei which are present in the hypothalamus. Nuclei, one more time, is the bunch of cell bodies inside the central nervous system. So here are the cell bodies. You can see there are different neurons here, and neurons has these cell bodies which are present in the hypothalamus. Okay, and these two neurons right here, these two cell bodies right here. Okay, I have mentioned here cell bodies, but these are actually bunch of cell bodies. Fine. So here are the cell bodies. They have their axons coming down in the posterior pituitary. Okay, here are the bunch of cell bodies which is called as nucleus, and bunch of these or the bundle of these axons in the central nervous system is called as a tract. Okay, we already know that. This is the tract, this is the nucleus. Fine. Inside the central nervous system, the bunch of cell bodies is called as a nucleus. The bundle of axons in the central nervous system is called as the tract. Fine. So here is the cell bodies which are present in the hypothalamus. Then the axons which are arising from these cell bodies are coming down into the posterior pituitary. Okay, so here is the tract. Okay, I have told you already that this posterior pituitary is made up of nervous tissue. So there are the neurons which are present there, unmyelinated nerve fibers. Okay, so this tract, these bundle of axons right here which are coming down from the hypothalamus into the posterior pituitary, they are actually the connection between the hypothalamus and the posterior pituitary. Okay, and this tract right here is called as hypoficial tract. Hypoficial tract. Hypoficial means hypophysis is the name of the pituitary gland. So it is called as hypothalamo-hypophyseal tract, the tract which is coming from the hypothalamus down into the posterior pituitary gland. Okay, so this is the connection. This hypothalamo-hypophyseal tract is the connection between the hypothalamus and the posterior pituitary. Now, coming here to the anterior pituitary, it does not have because it is made up of the glandular epithelium. So neurons, the tracts or the axons will not come down into the anterior pituitary gland. Okay, ये नीचे नहीं आएंगे tracts will be up to the infundibulum. Now, what is the connection between the hypothalamus and the anterior pituitary? It is this blood circulation. Okay, it is this portal system right here. Okay, what is the portal system? Normally what we see in the body, we see that wherever there are capillaries, those capillaries are drained by the veins or venules. Okay, and then those venules will go into veins, then the larger veins, then back into the right side of the heart. Okay, that is what we normally see in our body. But in the portal system, what we see that the venule or vein is draining the capillaries, and then that blood again goes into the capillaries. When in between two capillary beds, there is a vein that is called as the portal system. Okay, so here we can see, here are the capillaries which are there in the infundibulum. Okay, here are the capillaries which are in the infundibulum, and from these capillaries, this blood goes into this blood vessel, which is a vein or a venule. Okay, then after this vein or a venule, this blood again goes into the capillaries. Fine, so this type of arrangement, this type of structure is called as the portal system. Okay, and this portal system right here is the connection between the hypothalamus and the anterior pituitary gland. Okay, or the anterior lobe of the pituitary gland. And this portal system right here is called as the hypophyseal portal system. Hypophyseal portal system. Okay, there is one more example of this portal system, that is the hepatic portal system. Fine. So hypophyseal portal system, as this portal system is there in the pituitary gland, so it is called as the hypophyseal portal system. Now, this hypophyseal portal system, it contains three things actually. One is this vein right here in between, then there is this capillary bed which is there in the infundibulum, and then there is this capillary bed which is there in the anterior pituitary gland. Okay, so this capillary bed right here is called as primary capillary bed. Okay, and this right here is called as the secondary capillaries. Okay, so there are primary capillaries which are present in the infundibulum. There are secondary capillaries which are present in the anterior pituitary gland, and these two capillary beds are connected by a vein which is the connection actually between the infundibulum or between the hypothalamus and the anterior pituitary gland. Okay, so the connections between the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland are different in these two cases. It is different in the with the posterior part of the pituitary gland, and it is different with the anterior part of the pituitary gland. When we talk about the posterior pituitary, the connection is the bundle of axons which are called as hypothalamo-hypophyseal tract. And when we talk about the connection between the hypothalamus and the anterior pituitary, the connection is the portal system which is called as the hypophyseal portal system. Fine. Okay. Now we'll see the hormones which are secreted by the posterior pituitary gland and then the anterior pituitary gland. Fine. So first we will see the posterior pituitary gland. This posterior pituitary lobe or the neurohypophysis, it is actually not a true endocrine gland. What true endocrine gland is, true endocrine gland secretes the hormones which are synthesized by that gland itself. ओके जो उसी ग्लैंड में जो है हार्मोन्स सिंथेसाइज किए जाते हैं और उसके बाद उन हार्मोन्स को जो है वो ग्लैंड रिलीज करता है. But when we talk about this posterior pituitary gland, it does not synthesize those hormones which are secreted by that. Those hormones are secreted by this hypothalamus. Okay, we have seen here the cell bodies are present in the hypothalamus, then these axons from those cell bodies are coming down in the posterior pituitary. Okay, now those hormones which are secreted by this posterior pituitary, they are actually synthesized here in the hypothalamus. Then they are sent down through the axonal flow, through these axons, down into the axon terminals here. And they are stored in the axon terminals in the form of vesicles. Okay? And then after a particular stimulus, when these neurons here, when these cell bodies are stimulated by the stimulus, then the action potential is generated. That action potential comes down to the axon terminal, and these axon terminal contains these vesicles which are then sent out, and these hormones are released out of the posterior pituitary gland. Fine. So, I have told you already that this hypothalamus, it contains various nuclei. Okay? It contains various nuclei. The first nucleus we are going to talk here about is called as the supraoptic nucleus. Supraoptic nucleus. So supraoptic nucleus is present in the hypothalamus. It is a nucleus which is present in the hypothalamus, and the supraoptic nucleus, it actually synthesizes a spatial hormone. Okay, and that hormone is synthesized right here, and then that hormone is sent down through these axons, and they are stored here in the axon terminal. Okay, and that hormone is secreted here is called as antidiuretic hormone. That is called as ADH, antidiuretic hormone. What are the actions of this antidiuretic hormone? We will discuss that in a separate video. And here you have to remember that the supraoptic nucleus, it synthesizes a special hormone which is synthesized here in the hypothalamus, sent down, transported down to the axon terminal, stored here, and when there is particular stimulus which is stimulating this supraoptic nucleus, then the action potential will come down and this antidiuretic hormone will be released out of the posterior pituitary gland. So antidiuretic hormone is the first hormone which is secreted by the posterior pituitary gland. But remember, it is only secreted by posterior pituitary gland, but it is synthesized by the hypothalamus or inside the hypothalamus. Then we have the second nucleus here, which is called as the paraventricular nucleus. paraventricular nucleus. Now this paraventricular nucleus also synthesized a special hormone. Okay, and that hormone, just like antidiuretic hormone, that hormone is also synthesized here, transported down through the axon, stored here in the form of vesicles, and then this after a particular stimulus to this paraventricular nucleus, this action potentials comes down, and this hormone is also released out of the posterior pituitary gland, and that hormone is called as oxytocin. Okay, so oxytocin is the second hormone which is secreted from the posterior pituitary gland. Okay, so there is supraoptic nucleus which synthesizes the antidiuretic hormone, and then it is released out of the posterior pituitary gland. Then there is paraventricular nucleus which secretes which synthesizes the oxytocin, and then this oxytocin, after a particular stimulus here, is released out of the posterior pituitary gland. Okay, then we have this hormone, these you can see these cell bodies, they have the axons which are coming down up to the infundibulum, because now we have to talk about the anterior pituitary gland, and anterior pituitary is made up of glandular epithelium, not the nervous tissue. So these axons, they do not need to come down into the anterior pituitary, they just have to release something in these capillaries so that those hormones, or that which is released from here, that will be transported to the anterior pituitary gland, or the anterior lobe of the pituitary gland. Fine. So here is the nucleus. It is also called as the paraventricular nucleus. Okay, so paraventricular nucleus, don't get confused here. Paraventricular nucleus has some axons, has some fibers which are coming down into the posterior pituitary, and some axons are there up to the infundibulum. Okay, the paraventricular nucleus means a bunch of cell bodies. So there are many cell bodies there, right? And some cell bodies have the axons arising from them which are coming down into the posterior pituitary, and some axons are there up to the infundibulum. Okay, now these also synthesizes some hormones, and then those hormones are not sent directly to the anterior pituitary. Those hormones are secreted in this circulation, in this portal system, hypoficial portal system, in these capillaries. Then those hormones are taken into the anterior pituitary gland. Okay. Now, what are the hormones which are secreted by hypothalamus, and what is their function? We will come to know right now. Okay. Now, what is the need of this? What is the need of this portal system right here? This portal system, why we need one capillary, primary capillary here, and the secondary capillary here? In between there is venule. The need of this is, when these hormones, जब ये hormones यहाँ से release होते हैं from these nuclei, okay, from these nuclei, जब ये hormones secrete होते हैं, they come in the circulation, right? अब ये circulation में आ जाते हैं, these hormones हम चाहते हैं कि जल्दी से जल्दी हमारे anterior pituitary gland में पहुंच जाए, इससे पहले कि ये general circulation में चले जाए. They get diluted in the general circulation of the body. We want them to come in the anterior pituitary and make their effect. जो भी उनको effect करना है, right? So that is the importance of this portal system right here. Before these hormones are secreted in these primary capillary bed. Then from the primary capillary bed, the hormones are taken in this vein, in this hypoficial portal system here, in this vein, and from here after this it will go through the hypoficial veins into the general circulation. But before that, we want those hormones to come and stimulate these different cells which are present in the anterior pituitary. Okay, that is the importance of this hypoficial portal system. Okay, now this paraventricular nucleus has one function, that it synthesizes a hormone which is called as oxytocin, and that is synthesized here and stored here and then released from the posterior pituitary gland. Now this paraventricular nucleus, it releases one more hormone, but that hormone has the effect in the anterior pituitary, not the posterior pituitary. Okay, that hormone right here is called as corticotropic releasing hormone, CRH. Okay, corticotropin releasing hormone. That is secreted by this paraventricular nucleus, or synthesized there and then transported down through the axon, and from the axon terminal it is secreted out, but in the infundibulum. Then this corticotropin releasing hormone will go in this circulation. Okay, it will go in this circulation and it will come down. Fine, it will come down. Let me use the same color here. Fine. This corticotropin releasing hormone, it will come down and it will come through this hypoficial portal system and it will stimulate this cell right here. Okay, I have told you that the anterior pituitary is made up of glandular epithelium. So there are so many secretory cells which are present in the anterior pituitary. Okay, and one of the cells is right here which will be stimulated by this corticotropin releasing hormone. And this corticotropin releasing hormone is secreted by the hypothalamus. And which nucleus of the hypothalamus? It is the paraventricular nucleus. Fine. And this cell right here is called as corticotrope. Corticotrope. Okay, so this corticotrope will be stimulated by this corticotropin releasing hormone. And once this corticotropin releasing hormone stimulates this corticotrope, it releases two hormones actually. Okay, it releases two hormones. One is called as ACTH. ACTH is the adrenocorticotropic hormone. Okay, adrenocorticotropic hormone will go and act on the adrenal cortex. Okay, adrenal cortex is the different gland which is present in our body. Then that adrenal cortex will be stimulated by adrenocorticotropic hormone. Now, the first hormone which we are going to talk about, which is secreted by the anterior pituitary, is the adrenocorticotropic hormone. Now, this adrenocorticotropic hormone is secreted by anterior pituitary gland. Okay, and this hormone goes and stimulates or controls the activity of a different gland in our body. Fine. So, most of the hormones which are secreted by this anterior pituitary, most of them will go and control the activity of different glands in our body. That is why our pituitary gland is called as the master gland in our body. Fine. But remember, this master gland itself has a master. The activity of this pituitary gland is controlled by hypothalamus. So hypothalamus is the master of this master gland, and this is the master endocrine gland because it is controlling the activity of different glands of our body. Fine. Anyway, this corticotrope will be stimulated by corticotropin releasing hormone, and then this corticotrope, once stimulated, will secrete two hormones. First one is ACTH, that is adrenocorticotropic hormone, and the second one is called as the MSH, melanocyte stimulating hormone. Okay, melanocyte stimulating hormone will go and stimulate the melanocytes which secrete the melanin. Okay, then the melanocyte stimulating hormone will be secreted by the corticotrope, and this corticotrope will secrete these hormones only when it is stimulated by corticotropin releasing hormone, which is secreted by the paraventricular nucleus of the hypothalamus. Okay, then we will come here to the second nucleus actually. Okay, this is called as the pre-optic nucleus. Pre-optic nucleus. Here is the supraoptic nucleus and here is the pre-optic nucleus. Now this pre-optic nucleus, it also secretes two hormones actually. No, so before that let me tell you, sorry, paraventricular nucleus जो है ये और एक hormone release करता है. Okay, this paraventricular nucleus secretes one more hormone that is called as TRH. TRH means thyrotropin releasing hormone. So this is corticotropin releasing hormone. It secretes one more hormone which is called as thyrotropin releasing hormone. Okay, and this thyrotropin releasing hormone also will come in the circulation through this hypoficial portal system. It will come down and stimulate the second cell which is present in the anterior pituitary. Okay, and the second cell is called as thyrotrope. Fine. So first one was corticotrope, and corticotrope is stimulated by corticotropin releasing hormone, and the second cell is thyrotrope and it is stimulated by thyrotropin releasing hormone. Fine. And thyrotropin releasing hormone, once it stimulates this thyrotrope will secrete one hormone which is called as thyroid stimulating hormone, TSH. Okay, and this thyroid stimulating hormone, it will go and act on the thyroid gland, and once it stimulates thyroid gland secretes thyroid hormones. Okay, so this thyroid stimulating hormone is controlling the activity of thyroid gland. Okay, that is one more example why this pituitary gland is called as the master gland. Fine. Then there is this pre-optic nucleus. Okay, this pre-optic nucleus secretes one hormone that is called as gonadotropin releasing hormone, GnRH. Okay, GnRH, that is gonadotropin releasing hormone. Okay, gonadotropin releasing hormone, once secreted by pre-optic nucleus, it also comes in this circulation, like this. And once it comes in this circulation, this hypoficial portal system, it goes in the anterior pituitary and stimulates this cell right here. Okay, and this cell is stimulated, and this this cell right here in the anterior pituitary is called as gonadotrope. So this is the third type of cell which is present in the anterior pituitary. First one is corticotrope, which is releasing ACTH and MSH. Second is thyrotrope, which is releasing TSH, that is thyroid stimulating hormone. And the third cell is gonadotrope, and this gonadotrope is stimulated by gonadotropin releasing hormone, and this gonadotropin releasing hormone is secreted by the pre-optic nucleus of the hypothalamus. Okay, and this gonadotrope jo hai, it releases two hormones. Once it is stimulated, it releases two hormones. One is called as luteinizing hormone, that is called as LH, that is luteinizing hormone, and second is called as FSH, that is follicle stimulating hormone. Fine. So this is luteinizing hormone and this is follicle stimulating hormone. And luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone, they are secreted by anterior pituitary, but which cell of anterior pituitary? It is called as gonadotrope, and gonadotrope will release this LH and FSH only when it is stimulated by this hormone, which is called as gonadotropin releasing hormone, and this gonadotropin releasing hormone is secreted by the pre-optic nucleus. Fine? Clear up to now? Fine. Now we are going to talk about this last nucleus of the hypothalamus. And this last nucleus right here is called as arcuate nucleus. Okay? Arcuate nucleus is actually releasing two hormones. It is secreting two hormones. The first one is called as growth hormone releasing hormone. GHRH. Okay, GHRH is growth hormone releasing hormone. And this growth hormone releasing hormone, once it is secreted by this arcuate nucleus into this hypophyseal portal system, it comes down. It comes down through here, and it comes down, and it stimulates this cell right here. Okay, and this cell right here is called as somatotrope. Fine, somatotrope. And this somatotrope जो है, somatotrope, once it is stimulated by the growth hormone releasing hormone, it secretes one hormone you might be knowing about, you all might be knowing about, that is called as the growth hormone. Okay, so this growth hormone is released by somatotrope, and this somatotrope is stimulated by growth hormone releasing hormone. This growth hormone releasing hormone is secreted by arcuate nucleus of the hypothalamus. Fine? Then, this arcuate nucleus secretes one more hormone right here, and that is called as prolactin inhibitory hormone. And this prolactin inhibitory hormone is commonly known as dopamine. You might have heard about. This dopamine is released, or prolactin inhibitory hormone, it is released by the arcuate nucleus. Okay, now this prolactin inhibitory hormone or dopamine released by arcuate nucleus also comes in the circulation. And it comes in the circulation and it acts on this last cell which is called as lactotrope. But please concentrate here. This prolactin inhibitory hormone, it will act on the lactotrope, but the action will not be just like these. These cells were stimulated by all these hormones, but this prolactin inhibitory hormone, as the name indicates, it will inhibit this lactotrope. Okay, it will inhibit this lactotrope. This lactotrope actually secretes one hormone which is called as prolactin, which is released during the period of lactation. Actually, this prolactin will be released by lactotrope. Okay, but normally what happens, this arcuate nucleus, it secretes the prolactin inhibitory hormone, which actually inhibits this lactotrope. Okay, so this lactotrope will secrete the prolactin only when there will be decreased quantity of the prolactin inhibitory hormone. Fine. So what the stimulus will do actually, the stimulus will inhibit the arcuate nucleus and it will not secrete the prolactin inhibitory hormone. And once the prolactin inhibitory hormone is not secreted, or it is secreted in a less quantity, very less quantity, then this lactotrope will secrete prolactin. But it will not secrete prolactin if the prolactin inhibitory hormone is secreted in a larger quantity. Fine. So, to make it easy, let me tell you, the stimulus will act on, suppose, the paraventricular nucleus. Okay, or I will tell you supraoptic nucleus. The stimulus will be, suppose, hyperplasma osmolarity, increased plasma osmolarity, or decreased blood pressure. Fine. Plasma osmolarity will, when there will be increase, what do we mean by hyperplasma osmolarity, increased plasma osmolarity? That means there will be decreased water in the plasma and there will be increased solutes in the plasma. So what do we want? We want the water to be retained back in the body. We don't want water to be excreted through the urine, more water to be excreted through the urine. Okay, so the stimulus, this increased plasma osmolarity, it will stimulate the supraoptic nucleus, and supraoptic nucleus will increase the secretion of ADH. okay, antidiuretic hormone. But it is opposite here. The stimulus, it will not stimulate the arcuate nucleus so that the prolactin inhibitory hormone will be increased more. The stimulus will inhibit the arcuate nucleus so that this prolactin inhibitory hormone is not released, so that the lactotrope will secrete this hormone which is called as prolactin. Okay? Fine. So let's quickly revise this. We have covered in this video the basic anatomy of the pituitary gland. Before that, I have told you the location and the basic introduction about the pituitary gland. It is present in the sella turcica or the hypophyseal fossa. The weight is 0.5 grams and it is of a shape of a pea or a size of a pea. Then I have told you the basic anatomy of the pituitary gland. It has two major lobes. One is the adenohypophysis, and then there is neurohypophysis or anterior lobe and the posterior lobe. Then there is this mini lobe in between these two, which is called as intermediate lobe. Then we have talked about the connection between the hypothalamus and the pituitary gland. The connection between hypothalamus and posterior pituitary is this hypophyseal tract, hypothalamo-hypophyseal tract, and the connection between hypothalamus and the anterior pituitary is the hypophyseal portal system. Then we have seen the different hormones which are secreted by posterior pituitary. There are two actually. One is the Adh Antidiuretic Hormone and second is Oxytocin. But remember, this posterior pituitary gland is not a true endocrine gland, because the hormones which are secreted from here, they are actually synthesized in the hypothalamus. Fine? Then hypothalamus actually controls the activity of anterior pituitary also, but the hormones which are secreted by anterior pituitary, they are synthesized inside the anterior pituitary. Okay, it is controlling the activity definitely by releasing these hormones, but these hormones will stimulate different cells in the anterior pituitary, and these cells will release different types of hormones. And we have seen ACTH, Adrenocorticotropic Hormone, is the first hormone released from the anterior pituitary. Second is the melanocyte stimulating hormone. Third is the thyroid stimulating hormone. Fourth is the luteinizing hormone. Then there is follicle stimulating hormone. Then there is growth hormone. Then there is prolactin. Okay? Now, coming back here, one last point I want to tell you, that there is corticotropin releasing hormone. Okay? There can be corticotropin inhibitory hormone, which will decrease the secretion of the ACTH. Okay? There can be thyrotropin releasing hormone, there can be thyrotropin inhibitory hormone, TIH. Okay? There can be gonadotropin inhibitory hormone, or there can be growth hormone inhibitory hormone. Growth hormone inhibitory hormone, okay, which is called as somatostatin and statin. Somatostatin. Okay? And these releasing hormones, suppose corticotropin releasing hormone, it will stimulate corticotrope and it will secrete ACTH and MSH. But if this hypothalamus is releasing corticotropin inhibitory hormone, what it will do, it will simply inhibit this corticotrope so that it will stop the secretion, or it will decrease the secretion of adrenocorticotropic hormone. And same for all these different types of cells which are present in the anterior pituitary, and these anterior pituitary cells release these different types of hormones. I hope all this made sense. I hope you all understood. If you did, if it made sense, please comment down in the comment section, and please like this video and please share this video. Thank you.